Hey everybody, welcome to the Fired Up with CJ show. We have a very special show today with Timber Hawkeye, who is the author of Buddhist Boot Camp. And we're going to get some advice based on his own personal experience of leaving corporate America and creating your own path. Is that how you would describe it? A path not necessarily led by conventional standards of success, but your own standards of success, which are about happiness and following your calling. So welcome. And for folks out there that want to see the video broadcast or get some more information about work and following your path, make sure to find us on the Fired Up with CJ YouTube page. So welcome, Timber.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I wouldn't necessarily call it my own path. This isn't unique or new, and there have been movies made about this, in fact, in the past. And one of those movies really rocked me to the core, and that was Fight Club.
Fight Club?
And I found myself, Fight Club, in the very beginning where he says, what kind of sofa defines me as a person? And what kind of wardrobe and what kind of job and how much money would I need to make in order to be happy, and when will I feel complete, so to speak? Mm-hmm. And I was following that same recipe as everyone else, getting the condo downtown, the sports car, the clothes, just thinking that happiness is somewhere out there at the other end of all that effort.
Yeah.
And I think it was just one of those moments of clarity. There was another paralegal at the law firm who was celebrating her 30-year anniversary, and the fact that she was celebrating 30 years in a cubicle terrified me, and I needed to make a change. So it's really that simple. You kind of get a glimpse of what your life is going to be like if you don't change things. And if it looks fantastic, great, keep doing what you're doing. But if it scares you, like I was scared, I just took inventory. What can I change? It's kind of like a recipe that keeps coming out wrong every time. It's like, okay, well, what ingredient can I take out of it?
Yeah. So what was the recipe so the recipe was kind of the standard recipe that all of us bake from, right? Where it's like, put in the time, put in hours for 30 years, come out done, get retired, become retired. And,
2 weeks of vacation for a year worth of stress is not a balanced lifestyle. It just isn't. And, you take those 2 weeks of vacation and you stress about coming back. And I just don't think it's balanced. I think if we stress every day, we need to de-stress every day.
Yeah.
And that's possible whether we stay in the corporate world. In no way am I suggesting that everyone needs to sell everything they own and move to Hawaii.
Right.
It's not for everyone. What is for everyone, though, is a balance. Finding a way to make the recipe work where you're getting the results you're looking for.
Okay, so I'm trying to visualize the transition from seeing Fight Club, which is about this guy who has a split personality and is like his alter ego is like beating the crap out of people, to I'm going to move to Hawaii because I've seen this paralegal gal who's been here for 30 years and I can't do it. So tell me the little steps in between.
In the movie it depicts the internal struggle that's in all of us, the part of us that wants to cling to this illusion of security, this illusion of a safety net and a retirement account and a steady income and, knowing where everything, but it's not really knowing. It can all be taken away from us in a moment's notice. And I think in the past few years, we've all experienced it in one way or another.
Yeah.
And so when I realized it was all an illusion, that it wasn't very real, the voices within me, the one that wanted to break free and just wanted to be happy right now, not when I'm retired in 30 years, thought, well, how can I change my life now to where I'm doing now what I enjoy doing instead of waiting all those years to finally get to do those things?
Okay.
Am I making any sense?
Yeah. So you had kind of an internal voice that said, well, I don't want to wait for 30 years to achieve some state of whatever this gal is achieving. And it actually, like you said, it could be perfectly fine for other people, but for you, you looked at the outcome and thought, I don't want to do it.
Not so much, yeah. So it became a game, I was at a point where I just sent my credit card debt, the last check, like paying my credit card debt off. And I thought to myself, whoa, what am I going to do now that I don't have to send
Yeah.
Citibank $1,000 every month? What am I going to do with all that extra money? And yes, for a split moment, my mind went to all these different things I could spend my money on, a
Right.
bigger car, a bigger apartment, more stuff. But at the same time, there was another voice. It was quieter, but it was there. And it said, what if you don't make that extra 1,000? What if you just don't make it because you don't really need it anymore because you're done paying that off?
Right.
Well, then I thought, well, then I don't have to work so much. Oh, okay. Well, let's look at my other expenses. Where else can I cut expenses? And it became a game of how little money can I make?
Hmm.
And, where can I cut out expenses? Where can I live where my lifestyle will just be so cost efficient?
Right.
And I'm a big outdoors guy. I really like hiking, beach volleyball, tennis, swimming in the ocean, you name it, getting around town on a bike. And I was living in Seattle at the time, which
Hmm.
for about 2 weeks out of the year is fantastic for that kind of lifestyle.
Yeah, I'm living a 2 weeks right about now.
Yeah. Every once in a while you get a longer summer, but sometimes you don't get one at all.
Yeah.
And as you know, so, I thought, where can I go where I could live this lifestyle every single day?
Yeah.
And I decided on Hawaii, even though a lot of people have this idea that it's a very expensive place to live. All the things that I said I really like to do don't cost anything.
Yeah.
Hiking is free, volleyball is free, tennis is free, and I can do that all day, every day.
Right.
And if I cut out all these other expenses, like eating out all the time, and in Hawaii, nobody cares about designer clothes or the
Right.
sports car that I would need. Then it's
Right.
just, well, then I can just work like 15 hours a week and be okay.
Wow.
And Hawaii is interesting. In Hawaii, if you work more than 20 hours a week, the employer has to give you health insurance.
Oh, interesting.
It's 20.
Yeah.
I know. And
Wow.
because it's 20 hours, a lot of employers hire you for 19 because they don't
Oh,
want to give
wow.
you the health insurance.
Wow.
But the thing is, the moment you make too little, the state considers you poor enough to get free health insurance. Now, so either way, you're covered. But to make sure I'm not taking advantage of the system,
Right.
I consider the way I take care of myself, my way of life, is my health assurance instead of insurance. So, I'm very physically active. I eat very healthy. I
Right.
take care of myself, and I haven't been sick in years. In fact, the entire time I was in Hawaii, I've been okay.
Wow.
So, should something happen, of course, I was covered, but it's just everything was fine.
Yeah.
So,
Wow. It's a brave move to do that, to actually. So here's.
see, I don't.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I don't think it was brave to leave. I think it would have been braver and more courageous to work for attorneys for 20 more years.
Why would that be
I think
more courageous?
that would be so scary. The unknown was way more welcoming than knowing what the next 20 years were going to look like.
I think you're different than 99% of the people out there. Most people don't like the unknown. And what's so interesting, actually, for you, and I don't know if it was truly like this, but it seemed like you had no fear. Was there fears and concerns that came up along the way?
Internally, I didn't have any. Now, everyone around
Wow.
me in my life made it a point to point it out to me, like, well, where are you going to work? And, where are you going to live? Because I had no apartment lined up. I had no job lined up. I didn't know what I was going to do.
Yeah.
I knew what I didn't want to do. And I think
Yeah.
that's an equally important thing to know. It's like if
Right.
you've ever played Sudoku,
Right.
you don't know what numbers goes in that square. You figure out what number can't go in that square, and that gets you closer to the solution. So I knew I didn't want to work under fluorescent lights. I knew I didn't want to work full time. And I knew that I needed to make just an X amount of dollars every month just to, pay my rent and whatnot.
Right.
And so, yeah, I had to, I wouldn't say forego because I don't feel like I've sacrificed anything. I've
Right.
exchanged it.
Right.
It's kind of like when I decided to go vegetarian back in '95. I didn't
Right.
give up meat. I exchanged it for feeling good all the time.
Interesting.
It's kind of this exchange of a simple lifestyle where I'm happy instead of a struggle where I have little glimpses of happiness.
So,
Not making any sense.
yeah, no, that completely makes sense. I mean, what I'm hearing is very unusual because most people go into the fear state. And so I'm curious, Was the Buddhism and the study of Buddhism, did that come after or before you made this decision of leaving your corporate job?
Well, that's what's interesting is I was first introduced to Buddhism in 1993,
Hmm.
and it's always kind of been in the background. And we all have it in the background. We all have this information. You can call it Buddhism, you can call it wisdom, you can call it awareness, mindfulness. It can come disguised as any number of things, but we all have this knowledge. And it was always there, but I didn't always listen to it. It's like that voice in your head that says, you know what to do, and you
Yes.
ignore it, and you listen to the ego instead. So it was always there, and it was just one of those moments where that voice speaks and you actually listen. So it was there. It was kind of like when I decided to give up drinking.
Yeah.
You know, I had read years prior that, you know, the body is a temple, we should treat it as such. We already know logically, intellectually that this is the only body we're going to get. We should take really good care of it. It's like a jacket.
Yeah.
You only have one. You know, you're going to throw it on ground every day, you're going to hang it up. And I
Permanent
knew it
jacket.
intellectually.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And it's going to age on its own. You know, I don't need to
Right.
treat it terribly. I can just take care of it. But knowing it intellectually and going out drinking every night are two very different things. And
Yeah.
then one night I went out drinking and I ordered my usual drink and it sat there looking at me. And for whatever reason, that little, you know, lesson about your body is a jacket, take good care of it struck me. And I thought, well, if I can come up with one good reason that's not selfish to drink this, then I will. And that was like 13 years ago, you know?
Yeah.
It's just like,
Wow.
I have yet to come up with a way to justify it that's not, you know, cognitive dissonance. And it's not just studying religion or Buddhism. It's
You're
studying
a
religion
man with
and-
determination. That's what it is. It's incredible determination from what I can tell. A lot of people would have a
Yeah.
hard time doing a lot of the things that you're talking about, going it with no fear, kind of being able to take off just at that very moment saying, nope, it's time. And just that kind of straight black and white moving to the next, you know, over to the other side.
Yeah.
I think it's fantastic.
Yeah,
It's
and
interesting.
even with fear, I say go ahead. You know, it's because, again, like I said, what would have been scarier is working at the law firm for 20 more years.
Yeah.
It would have been, I guess, safer in some way, although in hindsight, a year after I left, the law firm actually discontinued the department I was working in, and my own boss lost his job.
Wow.
So it's one of those situations
Yeah.
where you look back and go, I did good, you know?
Yeah.
Like, and this happens in many other aspects of my life where whenever I had doubt or fear and I went anyway, I looked back and I was getting constant reaffirmations that leaving was the right thing to do.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to talk more about that because a lot of people, and I think that you've told us a lot already about how you went about going about making that change, but I think it's one that most people have a lot of trepidation, and so we're going to be talking about that in the next segment. We will be right back. We're talking to Timber Hawkeye, the author of The Buddhist Boot Camp, and he's going to be at the East West Bookstore in Seattle. Yay! He's going to come back to Seattle, hopefully be, you know, a nice sunny day when you come and you can go out running and whatever. But on August
the idea.
29th at 7:30 you'll be coming, and you can go to his website or your website is buddhistbootcamp.com, right?
.com.
.com. So you can go to get some more information on his events. We'll be right back. Welcome to the Fire It Up with CJ show. We have Timber Hawkeye, and he's talking about his book, The Buddhist Boot Camp. You know, I have a lot of clients that are in their 20s and 30s, and they're kind of facing these same decisions. They're the millennial workforce that people talk about who want ultimate flexibility in their lives, but, you know, they have parents and other loved ones who are saying, no, don't do it. Your life is going to be over. You need to follow the path. You know, stay for 30 years, that kind of thing. And I think part of the unknown that they're afraid of is because they haven't taken the steps that you have is what to expect. I mean, what kind of job can you get for 20 hours or less? And I mean, you talked earlier about what you did is you basically looked at what was, you know, going to happen to you going forward, and you said, like that's scary to me. That's more scary than, you know, that potential known outcome is scary to me, so I'd rather jump into the unknown. And then it looks like you did some penciling. You kind of looked at, you didn't have any debt, so you looked at your expenses and you looked at what expenses you could cut out. And then you thought, aha, these are expenses I can cut out, and this is how much money I have to make in order to make ends meet. And then I don't know what happened. What happened after that? How did you find the job? I know you had this 20-hour thing in Hawaii, but how did you find the job, and what kind of job did you find? And
I mean, when I looked at the total, and you know, when we redefine what enough means to us, we actually realize that we have plenty of it. And distinguishing between needs and wants is very important. And so I stayed in line with my values. It was really important for me to stay being vegan, to continue, you know, supporting organic local farmers,
right.
Especially in a place like Hawaii, where if you're not supporting local shops, everything is brought in. Mm-hmm. So it was really important for me to do that. And when I did the bottom line, you know, I could have gotten a job, anyway, a part-time job at Starbucks if I wanted. What ended up happening is a friend of mine sent me a link to a job opening on Craigslist initially that I'm managing an online art gallery, so I could work from home or from the gallery itself for a couple hours every day. It was 3 hours a day, so it was 15 hours a week.
Wow.
And then, you know, when that ended, I switched to being an editor for a Buddhist nonprofit organization. I worked at Whole Foods for a little while. You know, you do what you got to do. But most of the time was really spent doing what it was that made me happy. And if it's 3 hours a day during the hottest part of the day, when you're spending it indoors doing your work, then the rest of the day you have, you know, to do what you want. And we all dream of never setting an alarm ever again, you know, and it's been fantastic. Let me tell you, because you just...
Okay, what is your X?
So
is it
it's
like...
very possible.
Okay, I'm trying to figure out what your X is, and I thought, well, maybe he just eats, you know, a couple vegetable salad. That's not super expensive. I mean, how can you make it?
Very easy. I mean, and I'm an athlete, too, so I actually require quite a bit of food.
Yeah.
I play a lot of beach volleyball, and it's not that hard, you know. The healthiest food out there is actually the least expensive. You know, you got rice, you got beans, you got pasta, you got spinach, you got all this stuff. And in places like Hawaii, you know, everyone's got a mango tree and an avocado tree. My workplace actually had 7 fruit trees, from stark fruit to avocados to papayas.
Wow.
And when I left Hawaii to live in a monastery, and then I moved back to Hawaii to move into a lay practitioner's temple, the temple itself had quite the garden with a lot of fruit. And it is possible. It's just we have to think outside the box, get rid of the box. You know, we just just a whole new platform, like a blank page, and start over and say, how can I do this, and how can I drop any convention and just work with what I've got, and, you know, MacGyver style, and just make it work.
Okay, so here's the thing I'm curious about, because of all those things, I think, well, food is expensive, but if you eat vegan, that's probably less expensive. And then I thought, well, how about your rent? Because that seems to, and it seems like you lived in monasteries, that took care of a good portion of your rent. But for us that do, I mean, how did you even afford to live in a place?
So I had to forego things like I thought I would have to, you know, the big apartment and living on my own and all that stuff. And so it's like, you know what, I don't care if I live in a tiny little 300 square foot studio that I have to share with someone.
Right.
I'm going to spend most of my day outside anyway. You know, it's Hawaii, for crying out loud. Right. Why would I be inside? And I did, and I spent most of it, and I found a roommate, and it worked out so fantastically well that the least expensive place I was able to find was actually a penthouse studio with a view of the beach.
Oh, come on!
And it was, I know, I'm kind of rubbing it in, but it was so fantastic that it came with a parking spot, which I didn't need, and so I was able to rent out the parking spot.
Oh, come on!
It's just what I'm saying
ridiculous.
Is get creative. I know, get creative.
I just think it's get lucky. I mean, that's just getting lucky. How did you get a penthouse suite?
A lot of people would say that to me, like, oh, you're so lucky to live in Hawaii. And I'm like, luck had nothing to do with it. I planned my life this way.
Yeah.
You know, I just decided I don't need, you know, my own room with a high vaulted ceilings. What I need is more time in my day. And if I don't work all this, you know, it's just an exchange. It's never a sacrifice.
Yeah.
And what I got in return for not following fear and always following love-based decisions is a situation where I know you're saying, oh, come on, everything just works out because it's not fear-based.
Yeah. Wow. I just think
And
that's
that's trust.
fascinating.
That's faith. I can't give that to anybody. I wish I could. I have so much of it. I wish I could just spread it. But
So do you
maybe
feel
that's what
like,
the book does. Maybe.
and I think that is what your book does. It spreads the wisdom,
Mm.
and it comes from, it doesn't come from a fear place, which I think is where most of us reside, including myself. I try to be in love, but, it's probably 50-50 on a good week. All right, so in terms of career, so, most of us kind of like, plod ahead and we're trying to get to the next, positional title within a firm. And you've had several different jobs. I mean, do you think of it as a career trajectory, or is it like whatever job kind of meets? I know you're laughing at me. Is it just because
Yeah. I know, because
is this a funny
so
question?
It is. I think careers are overrated. Because I think the reason we strive so much for a career or a business card with a title on it is because it helps us identify ourselves.
Yes.
And when we think that if we quit our job or we lose our job, then our identity has somehow been taken away, or we don't know who we are but my identity and who I am has nothing to do with where I'm working or where I'm living or, what's going on with that. Has nothing to do with that's just what I'm doing. That's not who I am.
Okay.
So does that make sense?
Yeah, I think here's what I'm hearing. I'm hearing like my job is a paycheck for me to, make sure that the X is filled. And then the rest of the time is, like you said, you devote your time to writing, you devote your time to nonprofits, you devote your time to having fun. That's what the rest of your life. But there's hey, I need to make X. So whatever is going to get me to the X is where you're at. That's what I'm taking away.
Within reason, in the sense that it has to be in line with my values.
So you're not stripping or anything like that in Hawaii. You're doing anything.
Those days are over, CJ. Okay, those days are behind me. There are no more stripping days. I'm not in my 20s anyway. But I'll give you another example, and I hope it doesn't upset you even further. But I haven't had a car in Hawaii for 10 years because I didn't need it. And when I moved to California, Southern California, no less, you kind of have to have a car.
Yeah.
And so I thought, okay, well, what kind of car can I get that's in line with my values? And I got a tiny little smart car. And within a couple of weeks, I was standing in a red light next to another smart car that was wrapped in an advertisement for, a local company.
Yeah.
And I rolled down my window and I said, hey, you should wrap my car, because I know that when they wrap your car, they make your payments for you.
Oh, nice.
And so I know. So they wrapped my car, and now I have no car payment either. And so I get paid to drive around. Isn't it? So again, can I go out there and get the BMW i8 that I really want? No, of course not.
Right.
But I have a free car, and I get to live my life the way I actually want it. And that's where the list of priorities and what's most important to me comes into play.
Yes. Yeah, and it's the whole idea of exchanging. I like the idea of exchanging one thing to another. I think that's a good way of looking at it.
Now, am I driving around advertising Miller Lite? No, it's a local, home-based tutoring company. It's not to do any kind of job. It's something that's in line with my values. And that's where the identity piece comes in. I don't identify with my job. I identify with my guiding principles, with my core values. That's who I am. And as long as I don't take a job that jeopardizes that, I'm okay. I can find grace washing dishes in the back of a restaurant. I can find integrity in doing that.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with it because it affords me the life that I want to have.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
It totally makes sense. I think it actually makes more logical sense than the rest of the lives that we're leading, frankly.
Thank you.
Frankly.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay, so as I was listening to your story, I thought, that's because he lives in Hawaii. He was able to do all these things. Because Hawaiians are like the most relaxed, lovely people. But now you're living in Southern California. No offense, but it's it's a very different kind of attitude. I mean, everyone has plastic surgery. I mean, all of this kind of stuff. So,
and it's not everyone.
Okay, maybe yourself.
I thought it was
maybe yourself and the guy
too.
next door, but
No, I had the same kind of skepticism about it and thinking, how am I going to find, my niche there, and it's everywhere. It's everywhere, and I found it, and I'm right next to hiking trails and the beach, and we have Buddhist boot camp meetings here in Southern California all the time, and they're very well attended. People here, of all places, are actually more hungry for this information than you would think.
Yeah.
Because they're surrounded by so much of the plastic.
Are they willing to make the exchanges that you've been willing to make?
Absolutely, and it's everywhere. I was in Chicago last week, and a woman drove from Cincinnati, Ohio to Chicago to see me because she said that when she read that line in the book that said, work less and live more, it struck a chord. She quit her job, and for the past couple of years, she's the happiest she's ever been.
Wow.
And again, I'm not suggesting we all quit our jobs. I don't want to get any hate mail from people who are homeless and unemployed, and, because they read something that I said. This is something that was brewing and in the works for a long time.
Yeah. Where
I was okay, and if you're gonna be homeless, Hawaii is the best place to do it because the weather is very much permits it.
Yes.
But even here in Southern California, it's very possible to make it work. I think it's possible to make it work wherever you are, because the only thing I eliminated was fear.
Yeah.
The job, the car, all those things were fear-based. But when you get rid of fear, all that junk falls away with it. Yeah, it's not a recipe. I can't give you a breakdown of do this first and then that.
Yes, I hear it. I hear you. Well, I think the first thing is actually it's in your the first bit of work. There's some penciling out that you have to do, but I also think that what I'm hearing is the vast majority of work was done here. And here.
It's logic that brought me to Buddhism. It's absolutely complete logic. It's very. Like you said, it makes a lot more sense than this other stuff.
Yeah. Okay, so we have Timber Hawkeye talking about his book, The Buddhist Boot Camp, and there are a couple chapters in here about the very topic that we're talking about. And in the next segment, I wanted to get some of your feedback on what to tell those loved ones. You had said that, you had your parents or friends who are like, what are you doing? What are you going to do? And I think that's the next thing is, okay, you may not be fearful of it, but all of your friends and family are freaking out about your decision. How do you talk to them? So we'll be right back. Coach us on how to talk to them. Hey everybody, welcome to the Fired Up with CJ show. I'm CJ Liu, and today we have Timber Hawkeye, who is the author of this book, Buddhist Boot Camp, and we've been talking about the perfectly logical lifestyle that he's been leading, which is to basically live life. Right? I mean, to basically not to be defined, have our jobs define who we are, but have them be a means to an end so that we can enjoy life. Whether for you it's about doing outdoor activities or having time to pursue Buddhism, a lot of the stuff that you do for fun and that for meaning. And so one of the things I think when people make these kind of decisions are dealing with their well-intentioned loved ones that have a lot of objection. You may not have fear, but there are fears of people all around us. How do you deal with that? I mean, do you encounter it, and how did you deal with it when it came up for you?
Of course I did. My parents found it very easy to talk or even brag about their son when he had a job at a successful law firm. Living in the condo and driving a sports car. That's really easy to talk about your son when that's what he's doing.
Right.
And when I sold it all and moved to Hawaii, they're like, they could just talk about, we have a son who lives in Hawaii. And then the conversation kind of went to Hawaii instead of the son.
Right.
But inevitably, what it really took for my dad, for example, to really understand what my life was like, because it was so foreign to him. He's like, what are you doing? And I said, to truly understand this minimalistic lifestyle, I think it's best if you came here and not just visited me for a weekend, but if you came and lived with me to really get a taste of this.
Interesting.
And he did, and it was so incredible, CJ. I picked him up at the airport, brought him home, and he stood there in my doorway in shock, and he said, "Oh my God, you don't have anything." He was so used to the imported Corbusier dining table, and the and all the stuff, and I had nothing in there but a little cot and a little table and exposed, what is it called, cinder blocks, for walls, and very Hawaiian style, and it's not the gated community that he's used to.
Right.
And After living with me for a month, however, and preparing all the meals at home with me and going with me for a walk for 10 miles a day and meeting with my friends and my teachers and even coming with me to the beach and playing a little bit of volleyball with me, at the end of the month with me, he looked at me at the airport, gave me a big hug, and he said, "There is nothing missing from your life."
Oh.
And both of those statements are true. I think that's the real key here. There is nothing, you don't have anything, and there's nothing missing from your life. Would he have gotten to that realization without being there in first person and experiencing it? Probably not. And that's why, much like my parents, when I decided to move to Hawaii without a job lined up, without a place to live lined up, without knowing what I wanted to do with my life, which, by the way, I still don't know what I want to do. My friends asked me, can you keep in touch with us? Can you let us know what to do? Because they only knew corporate timber.
Yeah.
They knew, the vision plan. They knew about my 401k. They knew, all that stuff, which is long gone. And so they said, keep in touch with us. And that's what I did. Every month I would send them an email update to let them know what's going on with me. And after 8 years, my friend Kim challenged me to take those emails and publish them, to make them available online, because she thought more than just my close group of friends can benefit from what I was learning while I was in the process of learning it.
Ah.
And that's what Buddhist Boot Camp is. All it is. I never sat down to write a book. I never thought, I'm going to be an author. The book is just a collection of about 8 years worth of emails and journal entries that I sent to my friends to let them know what's going on with my life.
Wow.
And they were written about a month apart. That's why every chapter is only about a page long. And the chapters have nothing to do with one another. They're separate, and you can be read in any order. But does that make a little more sense now that
yes,
that's in
I
context?
didn't realize that. Why didn't I read this in this book? I guess I missed that part where you're describing how these are letters.
I don't think I said it. Maybe I need to say it.
I think you need to say it because that's fascinating. And plus, I would have loved to receive these as little letters in here. That's actually fascinating. Wow. So have some of your friends joined you? Have they? They're like, I'm quitting my job too, and I'll be living next on that small cot.
Have.
Yeah.
Yes, and quite a few people have. But I think what's beautiful about it is, again, there's not a single should statement in the book. I never go on and say you should quit your job or you should change this or you should get a divorce. I'm inviting people to look at their own recipe in their own life, their own cake, if your life was a cake.
Yes.
And go, what ingredient in my cake is making it bitter? And the invitation is for each of us to look at what's going on and figure out what is it, because like I said, we don't all need to quit our jobs and move to Hawaii.
Right.
For some of us we need to just change our eating habits or our spending habits or our drinking habits or the relationship we're in or just the voice in our own head that tells us that we're not good enough when we look in the mirror. Mm-hmm. So have my friends joined me? Absolutely. I think every person who reads the book ends up writing down a paragraph of sort or a list of their core values and the kind of person that they want to be and saying, this is the ideal version of me. And then cross-referencing it with the way they really are. And immediately they see, this is where I have work to do. Mm. And the beauty of that is it's an invitation for you to just be the best version of you there is. Mm-hmm. Without a label. You don't need to be a Buddhist. You don't need to be a Christian. It's not about that. It's about being Christ-like or Buddha-like or CJ-like. Right. Whatever CJ looks like when she takes a moment to write down her core values.
Yes.
Are you living in line with those values? And where can you bridge that gap between what you believe and how you act in the world? Because your beliefs don't make you a better person. Your behavior does.
Yep.
So we're talking about behavior modification here.
Yeah.
And no one's telling you what to do it, which is why it's so much more welcoming. Because when someone tells you what to do, you push them away, you resist.
And that's the tone because now that I know the background, you're writing to your friends and just saying, like, here's what's up and here's what I learned about life. It's not like you have to come join me. You can or cannot. It doesn't matter. I mean, it's about whatever you want to do to get closer to this or not get closer to this. There's no judgment or any kind of demands in this book. Wow. Okay. So you said something interesting that I'm still kind of. What did he mean by that? You said, I don't even know what I'm going to be doing next. You said, well, I don't know. I'm not sure what I'll be doing next for.
I don't have a career.
Really? So you have this website, you have like a bajillion followers, you've written this book. Are you going to be creating a 10-step program? I mean, and because that's the thing, you didn't write this book. You know, most people write the book with the intention of like, you know, I'm going to have a 10-step program, whatever. You didn't come at it from that point. Someone just said, "Oh, why don't you publish your emails?" You're like, "Okay, now I have an international
Okay.
bestseller."
Yeah.
Okay. Now
Exactly.
what?
It just kind of happened. And I didn't expect any of it. I initially just self-published it, you know, because it
Yeah.
doesn't cost anything and it's
Yeah.
available online right away. You know, and it was HarperCollins who contacted me, who said, we want to publish your book. And I said, okay. You know, it was just one of those things.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what that entailed and what it involved. And before I knew it, I was on a 3-month long book tour across the country. And then I did it across the UK.
Yeah.
And it just kind of, but I had no plans for it. I never sat down. It was really kind of a dare. You know, a friend just dared me to do it.
Yeah.
And because I came at it from nothing. There's, and spoiler alert for anyone out there who hasn't read the book yet, but there's nothing in there we don't already know.
Yeah.
Right? It's pure logic. And there's nothing in there that's new. I don't think of myself so much as a writer as a translator. You know, translating these ancient teachings into a language that people today can understand and beyond understand, actually implement into their daily lives.
Yeah.
I asked the head coach in Chicago, where I just was, why he thought the book worked so well with the teenagers that he works with, because the book is being used in schools as part of required reading, as part of the curriculum. We're using it in prisons, we're using it in correctional facilities and juvenile centers.
That's fantastic.
And he said it's because it's written from a place of searching, of looking for answers rather than, I found the answer, here it is. You know, it was actually written in the process of my search. It was it was asking just as many questions as providing answers, and I think that's what makes it so relatable, because we're all there, we're all looking for it.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, well, I just find this whole your whole process fascinating. The fact that all these things have just come along, and you're still. Do you think that this is it, or for now it's it, and you don't know what's going to come afterwards?
I have no idea what's going to come. I've been asked if there's going to be another book, and initially I said no, because I kind of said everything that needs to be said. Be grateful, be kind, end of story. I mean, it's really that simple.
Yeah.
But I've been encouraged to expand more on what I've written, and been told by my roommate and friends and people who come to the Buddhist boot camp meetings that we have constantly, globally, that people want more. And that they feel like I have more to share that I do during our meetups that I didn't in the book.
Yeah.
And so I'm always writing because that's very therapeutic for me. And there will probably be a follow-up book at some point, maybe.
You don't know.
I don't know.
You don't know.
I don't know. I could be calling you from Australia next year saying, I moved to Australia, and
I'm working at the Whole Foods there, or whatever comes
up. Exactly. It's all possible. I couldn't have foreseen me living where I am now, doing what I'm doing now at any point. And that's the key, is being so open to come what may. You know, it's just, when we talk about parents who do not approve of their children or what their decisions are, we always say, well, back up. You know, as long as your kid is happy and as long as your kid is healthy, how they get there is completely irrelevant.
Yeah.
Can we treat ourselves that way? As long as I'm happy, as long as I'm healthy, how I get there is irrelevant.
Yeah.
So if someone calls me tomorrow and says, hey, we have a job opportunity for you, I will cross-reference that job opportunity with my values and see if it's lined up.
Yeah.
If it's being a bartender, I will say no, thank you.
Right.
You know, but if it's going back to one of the schools that's using the book as part of their curriculum and saying, hey, we want you to speak to the students again, I'll be like, I'll be right there. You know, and that's why those list of core values is so important. They're guiding posts. They're guiding principles on how to live. Because when you live in line with your values, you're happy all the time.
Yeah.
And everything works out because you're not fighting life. You're just allowing it to unfold, and you're being okay with whatever comes up.
Yeah.
The hardest thing is getting rid of that idea in your head of what you think it should look like.
Right.
Drop the should.
I know. We just have so many prescriptions in our head of how life should be led. But and it will be interesting to see. So, do you have aspirations to have a family life? To what do you envision your retirement, or you just can't even think that far in advance?
I don't even know if I'll be here tomorrow. It's one of those things where, and none of us do, and if I wake up tomorrow, it's every morning when I wake up, it's like, oh, I'm awake again. All right, let's see what today's going to be like. And if I fall in love, fantastic, and if it unfolds, I'm open. I'm open to anything. And that's what was really interesting about going into the monastery and then coming back out of it, because I think we're here to learn to be completely selfless. And yet being at the monastery felt like the most selfish thing in the world for me to do. I don't regret having gone in, but I think choosing to stay would have felt too selfish for me because I was only there for my own benefit.
Right.
And my friends who got so used to hearing from me on a regular basis stopped receiving the emails because the monastery was off the grid.
Yeah.
And so they wrote to me encouraging me to come out to say, we miss hearing from you, even though we're still in that cubicle under the fluorescent lights.
Right.
The fact that you were one of us at one point and you escaped, so to speak.
You escaped.
And you were... It's true. And you're okay is very encouraging for us and inspirational for us that one day when the kids are off to college or whatever, when we're ready, this is not the end-all be-all, that there's a whole life after this. That's very possible and very tempting.
Yeah. And you've been living it in the prime of you've been living it in the prime of your life, right? I mean, you said you're in the 40s now, so you're in your 30s. That's kind of
37.
like 37. You're 37 now, so you've been living in the prime of your life, just in this particular lifestyle. I do think we have it kind of backwards. I feel like when I'm like 80, I should be at a desk job, just sitting there typing stuff in and writing. But it's kind of backwards in some ways, I think. In this odd way.
And when research was done, on why is it that in America, for example, people die within 5 years of retirement. It's like you wait all your life and you retire, and then you die 5 years later. It's because they've lost their reason to get up in the morning.
Yeah.
And the reason to get up in the morning for all those years was to get up and go to work, get up and go to work. And when you take that away, when they did research on the communities where people live to be over 100, and I don't mean in their deathbed, I mean still riding their bicycles and still living a full life at 100 years old, they found that in Okinawa is where they do. And they asked them, what is it that keeps you alive for so long? And they said the word ikigai, I-K-I-G-A-I. And it means like a reason to get up in the morning, a purpose. Mm-hmm. And we have to have a reason to get up in the morning that's not related to work. Right. It's just like when it comes to relationships, you can't depend on someone else to make you happy, because if they leave, that means they take your happiness away. Mm-hmm. We have to find our own happiness within us, come what may. It's just what's happening outside of me does not in any way fluctuate what's happening within. Mm-hmm. I can find my inner peace, my inner calm, no matter what is happening outside of me. And it doesn't mean that I stick my head in the mud and ignore it. Right. In fact, when I'm peaceful, I can handle what's happening outside of me a whole lot better.
Right.
Because I'm not reactionary, I'm not defensive, I'm not fearful. I'm just observing, and I allow and I bow to whatever is there rather than fight. For me, it's a constant struggle. Like I look at what it is that makes my knuckles white, and that's what I know I need to let go of.
I
it's
love
like
that.
If someone says, it works because we tense up physically,
I know.
And if something makes you like so upset about, if you're this upset about something,
for me it's my jaw. Look at this jaw, see? That's where I hold it. I don't have the white knuckle, but I have the jaw.
Yeah, when you feel that tightening, that's where you need to let go.
Exactly. All right, so you talked about these Buddhist boot camp meetings. So how do people get involved? If people want to actually have a group of community of people who have these same beliefs, what do we do?
Meetup.com. Just look up for Buddhist boot camp, and we host them. If I can physically attend, I will go there. Uh-huh. If I can't, like I'm doing one tomorrow in New York, I will Skype in, very much like this.
Yeah.
We sit in a circle and we discuss and ask questions and get answers, and we always leave and walk away with something new, and it's fantastic.
Wow, very
So everything
cool.
is available on the camp website. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So it's the book is the Buddhist Boot Camp, and the website is thebuddhistbootcamp.com.
It's
And then the
BuddhistBootcamp.com.
Facebook page is the Buddhist Boot Camp. It's pretty easy.
Very simple. Yeah, Buddhist Bootcamp.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for offering and inspiring us with your lifestyle. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It means so much to me that you're listening to the show. I would love your support in any way by giving me comments below, or to subscribe to the show or share the show with friends. Thank you again for your support. Love and blessings.